My hat! All right, so let's say you have a Traxxas slash, this is my slash Proline build, my Proline slash build, and you have an EZRUN system that you just purchased, and if you watch my video where I installed this system, I talk about these extensions and I walk you through how to make these little extensions so that the wires, because these wires are too short. But then the other problem is the sensor wire for this is the temperature sensor. It's a sensorless system, but it has the temperature sensor. This is too short. So if I run it, doesn't matter where I run it through. If I run it through here, it's just a little short. So there's a variety of things that you can do. If you don't mind having it stretched out like this, because of these extensions, you can actually just turn the motor, uninstall it, and then turn the motor over. The other thing too is you can remove these, but it'll be a pain, to be honest, to remove these little terminals. But you can remove the terminal just by using a flathead screwdriver, a small one, for example, this one, I was checking it. You can just lift those little plastic tabs. So there's two little plastic tabs in there. Let's see if the camera will get them. Well, if you have the system, you would see the two tabs. You can barely see them there. You lift one lightly, don't break it off, so be careful, and then this will just slide right off. The other option is to just leave these inside, which is really the better option. And then you can just splice, add small little pieces of wire. I have two little wires here. And then do it that way. But, to be honest, if you run it through here, it will barely fit, but you may be able to get the wire in through there. Why? Because with these extensions, I now have enough slack. The problem is you will not have slack here. That's the downside, which is why I would recommend that you add a piece of wire, which is what I'm going to do right now. Now, there's two ways you can do it. You can actually cut the wire right in there and then just solder those two little pieces of wire on. That's one way of doing it. And the reason why is I do not like wire stretched out all the way. Something that I could have done, I mean, I could still, is I could lift this ESC and then move it further back, but then it's not going to be sitting on this plate completely. That's the downside. But again, you can rotate the motor. This will barely be there. But then you run the risk of stripping this out. So I'd rather have just a little bit of slack in case this flexes. I mean, your truck will flex, this will move. That way you don't, I mean, the worst thing that can happen is you rip the wire right here by the ESC. So just to avoid that, what I'm going to end up doing, and there's no power to this so I can splice everything together, I'm just going to splice everything. And this is really the length that I need. You only need, let's see, what is that? That is about 5 centimeters of wire. That's all you need. But just like every wire, you need to make sure you splice it carefully not to cut too many of the threads because it is a smaller wire. But we're going to get started. Here we go. And there's no turning back once you cut this. Actually, I'm going to do this. I'm going to grab the snips instead, and I'm going to show you what I'm going to do and why I'm going to do it. I've done this before. I don't know why I was about to make that mistake. I mean, not a big mistake, but still. What I will do is I will actually cut the wire here. I'll cut that one there. Then I'll cut the red one over here, a little further down. And the reason why I'm doing that is this way there's no way they can touch each other in short, although I will be insulating everything. But here we go. So now I just have to remove some of this insulation, and not much really. And this wire is so fine, I'm having trouble cutting the insulation. I could probably do this with my hands. Yep, I can do it with my hands. That's how thin the insulation is. Alright, so here we go. And goes the next one, and the next one. And that is it. I wonder if I can do that to this just to expose a little more. Yes, you can. Alright, great. So once you have this, just grab the wire, place it sort of across as an X like this, but then I hold the ends and I actually twist the wire so that it kind of locks like this, and that's how I'm going to end up soldering the wire. So let's go ahead and do that. So I was working with the black one. And with thinner gauge wires such as this, it can be a challenge. So you just have to be patient. And I'm going to grab my helping hands just to hold one of the wires. And I'm going to start soldering. Now, if you have thinner solder, that is really the way to go. If you do not have thin solder, I'm going to show you, you can still do it with the thicker solder. I do have the thin stuff, but again, you don't need it if you don't have it. But the thinner solder would be the way to go for this. Here it goes. And do not need that much heat. Because it's so thin. Actually, you don't need that much solder either. That's pretty much it. If you apply too much heat, you're going to burn the insulation. There we go. Let's put the solder over here, and then we'll move the soldering gun to where I will not burn anything, especially myself. There we go. And the helping hands are good. So again, you do not want to apply too much heat. If you apply too much heat, you can burn the insulation. But that's the way I did it. So I staggered the cuts. So now if for some reason the insulation were to tear a little, these wires would not come into contact. That was the idea behind it. Now I need to cover this. Now I do not like running electrical tape on this because eventually it will fall. I mean, electrical tape decays after a while. It just gets gunky, it'll fall off. So I'm just going to use some liquid tape. And it may not be the prettiest, but it will do the job, or it would have done the job. It looks like, man, this is really gunky. Looks like I left it open. Oh well, I'm gonna smear my fingers. Yeah, this thing, I need to toss and get a new one. But here goes. So I'll just do that, make sure everything's covered with it. And I'm not worried about it. I'll just use rubbing alcohol and get the excess off, and that will work. I just need to get a little more tape, and I will be finished. A little more of this gunk. But yeah, the less you can handle materials like this, chemicals, the better. Just at this point, what am I going to do? Run and grab a glove? Too late. Here we go. Now, I actually do not mind there being liquid tape between the wires because this will actually help stick the wires together so they don't open up. Now I'm just going to grab a little more of that glue. And this is the other nice thing about staggering them. Here we go. just want to make sure everything metallic is covered, mainly so it doesn't corrode. The last thing that you want is your wires to corrode on the inside. There we go, perfect. If you have shrink wrap, you can also add some shrink wrap, or I should say shrink tubing. I'm almost finished. And I do have some shrink tubing that I think I will slide over this. Alright, so this seems pretty dry now, mostly dry, and looks like an even coat. Well, somewhat even, it's somewhat lumpy as well, but doesn't matter. Now the tubing, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to fold it this way so that it stays open. That's the reason why. And that way I can slide it. The other thing too is I want to keep this end open so that these edges do not strip this insulation off from the liquid tape. So I'm going to go ahead and run it. I'm going to try to keep it as straight as possible because the wire is very thin gauge, so it's too thin for me to run it through. And apparently I cut this way too long. So let me go ahead and remove. See, it's there. I can feel it here. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this out. I'm going to cut this here. Now I can feel the wires down here, so don't worry. Will not be cutting that. Here we go. So much for measuring. That's why you measure twice and you cut once. There we go. Oh, it was measured. It was just getting stuck. There it is. Perfect. If you really wanted to shrink this end, you could. I do not see a reason why. But this is it. And now I can go ahead and attach it. Let's see, based on this, it goes this way. So those two little tabs are going to go toward the outside of the can. The two little tabs on the plastic are going to go toward the outside. But here it is. I'm actually going to move this over here just to protect the wire a little more. Further down the wire. And that is it. Installation complete. At this point, this is fine. I'm not worried about it. There's plenty of slack, so if something shifts, moves, I'm not worried about that tearing off. But that is all you need. So that being said, thank you so much for watching.